Hey, we're live. Welcome, Alexa. Welcome, Nika. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm Daniela C. Merlano. I'll introduce myself later on and welcome everyone to this WEYU Academy talk about the importance of legal education in Web3. I think it's a key topic to talk about, and I'm very happy to have them both here to teach us a little bit about it. So I'll leave the space for the speakers to introduce themselves. So welcome, Nike. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, yeah, thanks for the invitation. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here. Yeah, a little bit about myself. I'm an IP attorney. I specialize in copyright law and just quit my corporate job to dive full time into Web3 with my own law firm, Web3 and Law. And I focus mainly on NFT projects and legal setup of DAOs right now.
Oh my God, that's great. So many synergies here with Alexa, which I'm very happy that you're meeting in this conversation. So Alexa,
Yeah.
welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
No, I thank you for having me. And, as I wrote in the post, right, this type of discussions are definitely, music to my ears when people are talking more and more about legal and understanding that being on the good side of the law is very important for the long term plans and generally for the project itself. A bit about me: I'm Alexa Mill. I'm a legal professional, gone decentralized. I built my career in tech startups, mostly in operational roles. And currently, I'm managing director at WEYU, which is a DAO focused nonprofit that supports blockchain based projects with frameworks for compliance, legality, risk management, and prevention. And my personal focus are DAOs, designing frameworks for decentralized governance and operations, building community, and educating about the industry. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm Daniela Timerlano. I'm currently building WEYU Academy, which is an academy meant to help brands transition to Web3 in a safe, practical way. And for every seat that we do and we train for a brand, we will give a free seat for people that needs it the most, which is the main beautiful purpose that moves me through this project. So about today, the first thing I'd like you girls to talk with us is what is your Web3 story as a lawyer, but mostly from the perspective of how did you get into it? I feel it's not common to find lawyers in Web3, and I would love for if there's any lawyer out there watching this to understand that they can also add value here. So that's the why behind this question.
I will go first. Yeah, as I said, I'm a legal professional that decided that actually when I finished law, I was like, this is not really what I want to do for the rest of my life. So I went to tech startups, and in my last fintech, I was like, I want to make a change. And I got into a DAO without even knowing what the DAO was and how it operates, or what even like decentralized industry stands for as an industry and as a philosophy. And the more I learned about it, the more it resonated with me, and I was like, well, this is my place to be. And when I understood what are the DAO issues when it comes to the regulations, the lack of the regulatory framework for DAOs, and the legal and compliance issues DAOs and their members may have, well, combined with my studies and with my tech career, I found myself intersection in all of those, and within DAOs, and that's how I got into the the legal and compliance side of the industry.
Thank you very much. So organic. That's one of the things I like about your story. It's very organic, very natural. How about you, Nike?
Well, yeah, I have a background in copyright law, and I've worked for 10 years, about 10 years in the music industry for a collection society of music. So music licensing was my jam for the past 10 years, and I saw how Web 2 evolved and dove into Web 3 like many people did, investing in cryptocurrencies and following the space and all. And yeah, then NFTs came up and the hype around NFTs came up, and I got into that, of course, too. And yeah, since I've always worked on the forefront of the tech, tech, um, the latest tech trends in the music industry, I've seen Web3 as like the latest iteration of the internet and got into it. And the more I dove into it and I connected with people, the more I got questions around it. Like, hey, you're an IP lawyer. I have this NFT project. What am I supposed to do now? Or I bought the NFT. What can I actually do with it now? And yeah, the questions became more and more. And yeah, the more like the space, I was like, oh my God, that's like Wild West, really, a little bit like, yeah, 1997 when the internet came up. And so that's how I got into it, like step by step. And yeah, that's how I ended up here.
Yeah, totally. I resonate with that so much. And that's also why I thought this conversation was so important, because it does feel like the Wild West out there sometimes. Or a lot of people come in with a lot of intentions and like what they want to do and dream of, but they forget that they still are in a world that needs to have legal regulations, which is, I think it's very important. For
Yeah.
so, like, assuming that maybe we're watched by people that have never heard of it, I think it's very important for us to clarify the main differences that Web 2 has versus Web 3 in the legal aspect. And Nikki was just telling me behind the scenes a couple of things that were like, yeah, Web 2 would never have to think. Those are the things that I would love to bring on this conversation, just to raise awareness of that to those brands that are thinking to come into the space.
Yeah. So building up on that, I would say that the most outstanding thing that's different is the tokens and the legal the regulation around tokens. So I think any no Web2 company ever had to think about like, am I a financial instrument? Do I offer investment opportunities and stuff like that? Unless you gave out shares and you had an IPO and all that stuff. Yeah, right. But as a normal Web2, I don't know, e-commerce business or something, you would never have to think about these things. But now with the tokens being the instrument that this economy kind of is built upon, these questions come up, and the SEC in the US famously has a very broad definition of a security. So your token might be a security, and you might be subject to these financial regulations. So that's, I think, one of the main differences between Web 2 and Web 3 from a regulatory standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I would also add, when it comes to DAOs, right, the main point being it's decentralized. There is no specific jurisdiction, right? Like, when you have an LLC or an LTD, right, it's pretty straightforward. You know the country that you're registered in, who the founder is, who the CEO is, who is the C-level management that is basically registered on the paper. While in a DAO, in a decentralized environment, well, that's not really the case, right? Like, and the whole goal is actually not to go. I mean, I wouldn't say the goal. I'm gonna correct myself there. The whole idea, right, and the whole sentiment is behind that. We don't want to be KYC. We don't want our identities to be known. And in a DAO, as DAO is decentralized, you don't have a specific jurisdiction that you can address it to, which raises a series of legal and compliance questions, right? So how to be compliant, how to be legal, and then of course when it comes to taxes, where do you pay those taxes if you don't have anywhere like the entity that is registered? So I think when it comes to DAOs, those are some of the main issues. Other issues, for example, are when you're an LTD, LLC, or a nonprofit, or whatever traditional world type of legally recognized structure, you can easily enter into contracts, right? You can easily hire people, and you can easily pass any AML, KYC, CFT requirements because you do have that legal standing and you have those papers to submit and people to KYC, while in decentralized industry, you don't actually have that. DAO as a DAO is invisible to the law, and it cannot sign contracts. It cannot pass any AML, KYC, CFT requirements because it just doesn't have the legal standing. Other difference I would say is that when any legal entity that we know in traditional world is because it has legal standing and also has certain level of legal protection, while a DAO doesn't have that. And for that reason, I mean, in tradition, since we don't have any laws that, I mean, except for in several countries, but in general, we don't have laws that recognize DAOs as legal entities. So what it happens is usually that DAO is confused for a general partnership. In a general partnership, there is no protection, and it's usually a bunch of unlimited personal liabilities of everyone involved. And since many see DAO as a general partnership, that also happens with the members of the DAO. And in case of any legal issues, legal challenges, everyone involved in the DAO can be liable with their personal assets, which which we did have an event in the past month that the DAO was actually that CFT filed against the DAO on the basis of a general partnership, and then going into securities, what Niga mentioned, is another layer. But I would say these are the things that really do distinguish the traditional, the Web2 and Web3, actually the on-chain as a whole in that legal and compliance aspect.
One, I feel that from not being a legal person lawyer, but I feel that it also runs along with the mindset of us now owning our actions, our data, our everything. So that's also why I feel it's so important to talk about these topics, because it's not just for, now that I hear you, it's not just for the builders to protect themselves, but also for the users and the participants to understand better what are we going into and how to embrace the technology in a positive way, understanding how to protect ourselves as well. So very, very, very important. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, and like about that case as well. I see so many things I have not thought about before. Um, and going from that, I think there's always the bright side and difficulties when it comes to legal that sometimes out of ignorance we do not think of. So leading to my next question, and what you were saying about protecting ourselves and the builders protecting themselves, what are the two main legal don'ts that all Web3 builders should be aware of? I'm not meaning about not doing something wrong, but like considering something very important before they start building or for building better.
It's a long list. I'm not sure, whether the question of two does it all. But what first comes to my mind would be what I often encounter when working with DAOs and DAO founders is going back to the fact that DAO is invisible to the law, so it does not have legal standing, it cannot hire, and it cannot sign the contracts. So usually, what the founders do, they sign the contract themselves individually on the behalf of the DAO. So what happens then is that the founder takes on all the risks that may be associated on the project to himself directly, and with that he bears all the unlimited personal liabilities, and it can go really bad for him. And other one is with that action, the person is also centralizing the project on themselves. And again, that is, if you're talking about DAO and the whole decentralization, that goes against the whole ethos of the industry and of DAOs, organizations. Yeah, I think I'm gonna stop there with the biggest fun. I'm curious to to hear from the IP side
Yeah,
whether we
and
have
the
enough
NFT
time.
side. Yeah, I think it's
Yeah,
very important. Thank you.
yeah. I think the main thing is kind of upfront. Like, do not assume, and that's the biggest mistake. Do not assume that the law does not apply, right? I mean, that's
That's my
maybe,
favorite thing with taxes, right? So,
yeah,
we're building on chain, we don't have to pay taxes, right?
yeah.
So we are somewhere in the Mars with Elon.
Yeah, so that's maybe the biggest mistake you can make. Like, really don't assume that, and look at what you're doing, right? And think about all the different areas of law. Think about the regulation. Think about GDPR. If you have a minting website, you're doing just normal e-commerce. Yeah, that's basically for NFT projects. Yeah, so there are regulations around consumer protection. There are regulations about privacy policies, the regulation around taxes, and of course IP. Yeah, have an IP strategy. Know what you're doing. Know what you want to pass on to the users when they buy your NFT. Yeah, have a strategy for that. So I think, yeah, the main don'ts is, like, don't assume that there is no law applied to what you're doing. And the second thing is, yeah, don't hold that lightly. Yeah, look around and check what you're doing. And um, yeah, and I mean, Alexa mentioned it already. Like, liability is a big issue. Yeah,
Yeah.
really look into that and see. I mean, in the long run, yeah, how's this going to evolve your project? And, so many projects start out like as a couple of friends, and then it professionalizes over time. And I mean, at the beginning, the risk might not be too high, right? But as you grow and as the project evolves, and you get more and more customers, you go global, yeah, and you're successful, and that's what you want, and that's great, yeah. But you have to keep in mind that there might be liabilities coming with that, and you might not want to be personally liable for many things. So, yeah, keep that in mind.
And I would also add, like, I wouldn't say it's main, but it's a very common one, and it's a really small to say issue that I often encounter. Like when you go on a website, there are no policies, not at all, right? So, and that's like such a small thing to deal with and to kind of, get out of the way. But it happens more than often, more than should, that many projects do not have even the basic website policies.
Yeah, privacy
Very
policies, terms of
interesting.
sales.
Yeah.
So would you say, I'm just making up this question now as I hear you speaking, but would you say it makes sense? Because I feel that in Web3, there's a lot of new entrepreneurs, which means people that have never built something before, but they found a little gap in a new space and they're like, yeah, I'm gonna make it. So they don't think of this stuff out of not any bad intentions. So do you think that it would be strategic or a good thing to do to start your project, like once you think of it, to think of it as if it was Web 2, kind of like if this was the business of the goal. I understand that Web 3 is the technology behind it and the strategy behind it, but like, this is my business model, this is what I should be taking care of legally wise, this is how I will manage my people contract wise, and then place that into how Web 3 technologies can help this with. Does that make sense to like build backwards in those meanings?
I would agree to a certain point, to be honest, because like each and every project, right? So let's say that you're looking to build a blockchain based project, a DAO in the making. With that assumption, I would say that each and every project, wherever it is, it like Web 2 or Web 3, is start centralized, and because it starts from one person or from a small team, and The decision making is super centralized, the dependence is super centralized, which is perfectly normal. And in that case, even though you're looking to go decentralized, looking to go DAO at some point, you need to be aware of the legal risks. And that consultancy or that hour or two with a legal expert should happen, as you know, at earliest stage. I mean, you're not necessarily ready, you know, to deal with all the legal stuff that you need like right away, but you need to have it on your roadmap. And when you start building your project, when you start building your product, you have to have that legal, you know, note saying, check in with your lawyer right now at this stage, because you need to see how did the regulations change, because we've been seeing that the industry regulations are changing rapidly. I need to check in whether, you know, what your community, you know, the community has changed, the product probably changed a lot since the very first call, which is perfectly normal. The roadmap changed, many things changed. So what you need to do is to check in with a lawyer, share the update, and say like, okay, like, you know, should I start thinking more about legal now, or I can hold a bit more when the funds come in? But you need to be aware of the potential legal issues from the very beginning, because if you're building and not even thinking about the legal implications, at some point you might just not be able to launch because the legal risks are too big. And having that, you know, education and information call is perfectly okay to have from the very beginning. And then based on the funds and on the project and on the product roadmap and everything, you can see when you can afford and when you should start thinking more seriously about it.
Yeah, I would 100% second that. I've had this so often. The founders come to me, we're all set now, and all we need now is legal. And I'm like, yeah, great. When is your
Oh,
launch
my
date?
favorite.
When is the mint date? And they're like, yeah, next week. Like, yeah, okay, great. Yeah, so this is not an
Yeah,
ideal
that is
situation.
exactly why it's so important to talk about
Yeah,
it, because we need more people to build better from
yeah,
scratch, because rebuilding is so much harder.
yeah, yeah. So it's so much easier for everyone to just involve lawyer, even tax advisor, also from the beginning, and yeah, just to be sure that you don't run into any unexpected problems.
I
You
agree, but
probably will
something
anyway, right? It
Yeah,
just
exactly. Yeah,
depends the size of the problem
unavoidable
you
problems.
have.
Yeah.
yeah, and what I wanted to say was that what I'm feeling and understanding now is that yes, like we're in a space where legal is still going to change from time to time. More governments are getting into it to see how they can um find their ways also to into the space, like into regulating it. Still, there's enough legal background and information and data to build something great from scratch, taking that into account. Like, what I mean is, because it's changing and because it's new and because it's still waiting for more regulations on to come, does not mean that there's not enough information out there to build something good from scratch. Am I making sense?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, right? Like, if people need to understand that even though there are no to say, like, you know, Web3 specific legal framework, it doesn't mean that you're immune to the traditional and existing legal framework. Because until we do have that, again, like Web3 laws, traditional law applies. Right. And the problem with the traditional law, it just doesn't support the innovative nature of the industry. And the law, I mean, comes after after tech development, right? I mean, it's perfectly logical. But if, again, what I said, right, like you don't live on Mars just because you were building on chain, and you still live, you know, wherever you live, you still have to comply with local laws, with local taxes, your community, your co-founders, or your contributors team, they also need to comply with their local laws. Yes, the lack is of the regulatory framework on the industry facts, but that doesn't mean that, we're somewhere in the middle and we just exist there until Web3 law comes in. It's
I
just,
agree, and something I'm seeing here also is so many double clicks in this conversation. Like it's much more important that we all see, because it still has its little different stuff if I'm thinking of a DAO, or if I'm thinking of an NFT project, or even if I just have a remote team that works in Web3. I'm like, there's so many little things to take into account, and it's so yeah, like definitely, as Daryl was saying, like I think we all need a lawyer friendly that is into this. And before, I want to go back to something that Nika was talking to us, and it's IP. So just if you're starting a project in Web3, if you're thinking of launching an NFT collection, which is the most frequent one, what are the main considerations around IP that you should be thinking of?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there are two main aspects to this. So, I mean, what I see right now is that most NFTs have an underlying copyright protected asset. So it's either art or music or a design or anything along these lines. So it's copyright protected and someone created it. So make sure that if you want to sell this or if you want to sell any rights, yeah, make sure you have the rights and make sure you have the exclusive rights. And
oh, how you said
as
it.
a as a founder, yeah, you want to be in a like exclusive worldwide, yeah, as little limitations as possible. And this is one, just as a side note, because it's a question I get very often. It does not make a difference if one of the founders is the creator. Yeah, the copyright law applies to anyone, no matter if it's one of the founders or not. And I would strongly advise to have any kind of license contract with the creator, to make sure you have the rights, right? Even though it's a friend of yours or founders, right? It's not automatically that it doesn't happen automatically that when the founder is the creator, that the IP is like in the project or something. Yeah, it's tied to a person. So if one of the founders is the creator of the art, they're the copyright owner, and you need the rights from them. And make sure, yeah, that's clear. Make sure you have a contract, because projects break up and things go sideways, and yeah, you just want to make sure, yeah, that you have this kind of
Just so to
straight.
understand this
Yeah.
in this side of the story, which I don't know about it. So that means that there's three founders of the
Hmm.
project. One of them is the art creator, right?
Hmm.
So the project splits, the IP stays with the creator in the sense of
Hmm.
if the contract is placed like that. If it's not placed like that, what happens?
Um, well, I mean, it sits with the creator. If you don't have a
Okay.
license, you don't have the IP rights.
Okay. So
So,
in distinct of who's had which role, as long as it's your creation, IP stays
yeah,
with you,
yeah,
and
yes,
law will back that up.
yes,
Unless
Okay,
you have
very
a
great.
contract in place, right?
yeah.
Unless you have the project contract in place and everything that the creator risk has created is the full IP ownership of the project itself. But you need to have a contract in place. And like to your point, Nika, when you reminded me of my, one of my favorite things is like, oh, well, I just hired some cool guy from Twitter who is doing all our NFTs and stuff. I'm like, how about the contract?
Yeah,
No. Or I'm like, dude, like, are you serious? Like, you work with a person that is not even on the founding team. Like the founding team, I can get right, like, I can understand, but hiring just any artist, and even though you pay that person, you need to have a contract in place that says, yes, you're creating this, and that, and for that, you're receiving this amount of money. And you do agree that absolutely everything you create is belongs to the project, not to you. And many
Mhm.
do that. Like they just don't
Yeah,
have any
yeah,
any legal protection in place.
yeah, 100%.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Very interesting because also I think that's a business versus mindset question, right? Because a lot of what I've heard around side around like why NFTs is protecting also like the artists is because it's making it theirs. So I think that's a double-sided sword in means of it's on the business's value how they want to manage it, understanding that the first right goes to the artist. If am I understanding it well?
Mhm.
Okay, okay,
Yes.
interesting. What happens if, for example, I'm guessing the answer has been given, but just in case, there's a lot of I've heard a lot of questions around when it's digital, which means there's an art piece or something physical that then became an NFT that you can't buy the NFT. That does not mean that you own the physical piece either. And that's
Yeah.
kind of split it up from the IP as well. So it becomes like a three modal there. How does it work?
Yeah, that's
I'm popping
yeah,
some
that's the
surprise questions. Sorry, it's so
no, no,
interesting.
no, that's fine. That's the second aspect. Yeah. What do you do then with the rights that you have? And it's super important to understand that the NFT and the underlying asset, like the artwork, are two separate things. Only because you have the ownership of the NFT does not mean that you own the IP rights. Yeah, it's the same if you buy a an art a poster or something in a museum shop. You wouldn't expect that you own the actual artwork, right? So it's the same in the digital space. And if you buy, you would not expect that you are allowed to use the trademark of Porsche or Mercedes or whatever it is. You wouldn't expect that, right? It's the exact same thing in the digital space. So the ownership of a physical item and the ownership of IP are two different rights. So must not be mixed up.
Hmm.
And
Say it
It's
louder
been
for the ones in
said.
the back.
I mean, recently we had a case, right? Like with a very famous brand, their NFTs and how they structured some of the documents, some of the legal documents, when it comes to NFT and the real life object, right? There was like that issue where people actually assumed that since they're buying loads of money for that specific NFT, they also have ownership rights over the actual real world object. And when they actually read that legal document, they were like, what the hell? Like, this is not what I actually thought was going to be. So that happens a lot. And that even though you own the NFT, it does not give you it's NFT, right? So it's on chain. And even though it can be connected or not with the off-chain object, that doesn't mean that you own it and that you have any rights over it. You may have the rights to be the first to buy the real life object, but only if that was actually stated in any sort of contract or of a legal document.
And if you're not an artist but a brand, for example, that I think might be a little different, and you start using NFTs for loyalty programs or something else, it's the same IP considerations, or what would be like the main ones for brands?
Yeah, I think you have to make clear also like what people are allowed to do with it
Yeah.
always. Yeah. Are they allowed to display the collectible with the brand? Are they allowed to advertise with it? I don't know, depending what it is. Yeah. Are they allowed to showcase it on their websites? Are they allowed to edit it? Or yeah, I don't know, change the colors or something. Yeah. Or attach their own trademark next to it or something like that, you know. You have to, yeah, you want to make sure that you're very clear about that in your terms and conditions.
I think that is very important, mostly as we were speaking about the importance of legal education to transition to Web3, because I feel that that might be a very possible question for brands to transition. Like, what is happening if I go into that world where it sounds like everyone is in the ownership side of it, and like, are they owning something else than what I'm offering, or and how do I offer it so I keep protected what I need to keep protected. I don't know if that's
Mm.
something that many like some of your clients might be asking around.
Yeah, definitely. It's all kinds of questions around, I mean, in a broader sense, IP strategy. Yeah, what do I want to do with that NFT, and what strategy do I have? I mean, it can be a lot of it can be very interesting for projects to give very broad IP rights with their NFT. Yeah, and create an entire new ecosystem around it, and that can be very interesting. But you have to be very conscious about that, and you have to give it a lot of thought, because you're also giving up a lot of control, right? And I mean that's copyright, but in case of your brand, you would want to control probably the destiny of the brand, so you wouldn't want that in someone else's hands. So yeah, definitely, you have to be very very mindful about this.
Yeah, and another thing that I also heard is like when a famous NFT collection, I mean, actually, a few of them, people were started printing the NFTs on T-shirts and selling them,
Yeah,
and they
right.
couldn't collect anything because they didn't protect the property. And I mean, if there is no protection, if there is no property assigned to someone, well, you cannot also enjoy any additional sources of revenue, to put it that way, because there is nothing legally to support your claim. You can be the author. Wow, fantastic, good for you, great for you. Yeah, how you're super talented, but that doesn't mean anything at this point because you did not protect your property. So that is, I mean, I attended an interesting space of NFT artists, and they were like so complaining because someone went and printed. They use their NFTs and they printed T-shirts and I think like mugs or something, and they were selling like, "Oh, look at NFTs," and they of course earned money, but the artists couldn't claim anything, and they were like, why is that not even possible? I'm Everything is on chain. I'm the owner, I'm the author, I'm the artist. Well, you cannot do anything about it. You did not put necessary legal measures in place so you can actually claim anything over someone using your art for their personal gain.
Wow, so important. And I really appreciate that you both are sharing a couple of use cases. Like, that's one of the most important things for us in WEYU Academy. And we feel that if you don't see the use cases, if you don't see how practical it is with real life stories of things that worked or did not work, it's way harder to actually learn and connect with it. And I feel that that eases a lot the process of learning. And I really appreciate it because it is like how I'm receiving it is, yeah, sometimes it felt obvious to merchandise, but if you're merchandising in NFT space, give a couple of double thoughts on how you're doing so, and also how you're being fair with the artists that are sharing this with you. So I feel that that is such a nice use case and to place upon into this question. Thank you so much for that. um Oliver is trying to jump in, but We'll see how it goes. More than welcome, more than happy to have you here. And thank you so much for saying hello to the ladies in this conversation. We appreciate you. um, okay, so last but not least, I feel that first I want to recap on something on the first question from what I've learned so far to see if I'm getting it right and maybe some of the audience as well. One of the three main things I'm listening that are key when you're going to start to build in Web3 to think of within your, well, like the physical space that you're building in, which means the country, and with the people that are working with you alongside with it, which is first was tokenomics that are different, tokens, IP, and the last one would be I just forgot the word. Tokens, IP, and taxes. Right? Those would be like the
Jurisdiction, right? So
three, yeah, the three main topics of if you're gonna build this, ask yourself this questions about that, and double click on the rest. But am I getting it right?
yeah, of course. I mean, even if you're not building a project that is not an NFT project, there are still
Think of
IP
that.
and copyright issues if you need to think about. So it's not only about
And
NFTs, right?
people.
Because yeah, because you do have that, I mean, mainly focused on art,
Yeah.
music, or different forms, and everyone is mostly hitting like, NFTs are all about, when it comes to legal, IP, copyright, this and that. But
Hey.
even though if you're building something that is non-NFT, hey, that is non-NFT, you still need to think of potential copyright IP issues, just of course, like for the different things, for example, for tech, for the product,
Yeah.
like for the logo. I mean, those very, very small, stupid things, right? Things you wouldn't really think of. They're
Yeah.
also very important.
I'll thank you for that because next question is key, and I'm happy that Oliver is here for it, which is one
Hey,
last
ladies.
piece of advice that you
Yes.
give to
Hey.
Web3 builders to start their project with the right foot. So Oliver, very happy that you made it. Thank you so much with being in the cab and everything to just want to be here and give your little piece of advice.
Yeah, first of all, ladies, thank you so much for just running the show without me. And it's terrible to be caught in a plane. There's no chance out. So it really felt terrible. So thank you so much. And I'm really awfully sorry that I couldn't make it in time. So what would be the one advice for the builders to start their project? Let's say, I think it is important to understand where you want to go. The first thing is, and that is really not only related to legal, but it may have legal implications, which means if you start your project and you want to do something for the community, then it is not necessarily too overly complicated. It's not necessarily to come up with fractionalized ownership ideas, investment strategy, and whatever. Maybe a pure NFT art project does it. If you want to keep your community happy, just provide them with updates, provide them with a channel, find something that makes them interested, but please don't try to outsmart the entire industry and to create a strategy that is not working. I think the worst thing you can do as when you start your NFT or your Web3 project is that you do not include the audience and the people you want to address. And the absolutely worst thing could be that you end up in a situation where you have to deliver, but no one wants what you deliver, or you don't want to deliver either. And I've seen a couple of projects that started very ambitiously, and they ended up being a complete nightmare, where huge brands got soaked up in the swamp of Discord battles, of people asking things that they couldn't answer. And you really have to be prepared and do your homework before you start. Don't be afraid. There are a couple of legal questions you have to solve, a couple of marketing questions, a couple of financial ones. But I mean, really, try it, try small things, try outsource things, but don't be afraid. And I think that's the key message.
Love it. Love how you mix it up. The do your own research that we always hear of, to do your own homework. It took a little bit more of the responsibility there. Thank you so much. What would you add to that, Nico?
Yeah, I would just on that and say, yeah, you have a business. It's a business. And even in Web3, you need a business model that works, right? It's not enough to just do anything on the blockchain. You need a business model. You need customers or clients or whatever it is that you're offering. There needs to be a value. You need to deliver a value. And I think that's one, it might sound very, very basic, but as Oliver just said, I mean, it happens more often than not that founders are super excited and hyped up about things, and yeah, forget that that there needs to be an actual interest by their audience and a business model around it that works. So yeah, that's my 2 cents to that.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree with both, and would add, it's important to build a product that actually solves a problem. I think we are past, um, you know, JPEGs and similar things, hopefully. When it comes to DAO, don't DAO just to DAO. Don't go down too soon because it's gonna have a longer term consequences that they fall a lot. They fall badly on the community because the trust will be compromised, and KYC in our community, and that is very very important because if you don't know your community, well, it's not really good for the longer term plans for the project and its sustainability.
I agree. I'll give my 2 cents on non-legal but how to mindful build, and I love that Nike thought of that too, because I want to give the voice to Samantha that he has a question about DAOs. If Alex, you can help him out with this, with bit of advice. How do you consider building a DAO strategy via community voting before launching the token? How can these strategies be recorded for future legal action? Might be too long, but if you have a couple of advice there, we will be very happy to receive it.
So, how do you consider building DAO strategies via community voting? Well, what you can do there is communicate your plans to the community and ask for the feedback. Ask them what they think, and do they have different opinion? Do they have different perspective on things, or maybe ideas, maybe even better ideas, right? So there are so many people that can contribute differently. There are, of course, community pages that can be used to that. For example, Discord or Discourse, the most popular ones. And you can think of some sort of like an off-chain voting that is literally to kind of check the pulse and what is the community opinion on a specific topic. And how can these strategies be recorded for future legal actions? Well, internet doesn't forget. And let's say that you have certain if you have a topic on, let's say, discourse on a forum, discussion goes on, and after some time you just log that. You can put it into archives, and if needed you can just pull it back out and show that there was actual discussion with the community.
Thank you so much. I want to say thanks also to Angela. Thank you for the loving words. We appreciate it. And ladies and Oliver, now that he made it, thank you so much, Oliver, for being here as well. And last but not least, my little piece of advice that I will always give, and that's one of the things I love the most that we want to take care of in WEYU Academy, is however you want to build in Web3, build purposeful and take care of the experience, of the evaluation, of asking yourself and others how you're doing with it, of the emotions that you are bringing to the community or to the people that you're impacting with your project. And last but not least, education. We're still very early stage. Most of the people are not really knowing why on why are they making some decisions to participate or interact with Web3. So it's on us that we're leading the road to educate them so they can come to the space in a safer and better experience way. So thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it. Thank you, Oliver. Thank you, Nika, for joining us last minute. We highly appreciate that effort, and I'm hope to see you here in NFT London after the call. And Alexa, thank you so much for saying this. I love learning from you.
My pleasure, and thanks for the invite.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. I would say lifetime drinks are on me for Nika. That was for sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for staying here with us this 50 minutes. We appreciate you for the questions, the feedback. We're here for you, and have a great evening or day, wherever you're from.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.